think it's 2 o'clock, time to start the session. Welcome for those of you who joined the session here. I have the pleasure of talking about Defender for Business. We'll kick off here with a short introduction to the sponsors of this event, without whom it would probably not be possible to do an event like this. Shortly about me, for those who don't know me, my name is Peter Schmidt. I'm based out of Denmark, where I work as a cloud and security architect in my own company, Neo Consulting. I'm active on Twitter and from time to time on my blog as well. I've Microsoft MVP, been an MVP now for 15 years. Going back to Exchange and Office 365 and now the M365 framework. I'm also a certified master on Exchange and a certified trainer as well. So a little about what I'll be going through this session. A brief introduction to the security hassles we see with especially the small business or companies in general that we as the consultants work with. And then I'll dive into the Defender for Business and how Defender for Business is different from Defender for Endpoint. A little about how we, with the wizard and all that comes with the Defender for Business, easily can onboard everything in our tenant. And then I have a demo showing some of the feature set of the Defender for Business, and wrap up with a short summary and probably plenty of time for questions as well. So if we look into the security risk and the increase of attacks that we see everywhere, especially on phishing and the ransomware attacks that we see in business, is increasing everywhere and has been for years. So Microsoft has had the Defender for Endpoint suite for a long time, and last year around this time at Ignite, they introduced the newer version of Defender targeted the small business segment, called Defender for Business, which is here to help these businesses protect against ransomware, give them some tools where we can better see the threat and vulnerabilities that is targeted our business and the segment we are in and our end users and the devices we have, and also to give us some protection against the ransomware attacks in terms of endpoint detection and response capabilities built into to the client and the products here. So basically, from a Microsoft standpoint, their goal has been to create a suite for the SMB segment that gives them security on an enterprise-grade level in terms of next-gen protection, endpoint detection and response, a good overview of the threat and vulnerability that we see in our environment. It should be easy to use, so there is basically an easy-to-use dashboard, which is very wizard-driven, and there are some out-of-the-box default policies which is available that the SMBs can easily enable and then drive from there with recommendations from Microsoft in terms of the configuration of Defender for Business. So this is very cost effective for the SMBs because it's part of for most SMBs, it's probably part of SKUs that they might already have, since this is part of the business premium SKU. And we can also buy it separately, but more about the licensing and the difference in licensing a bit later. So how is the Microsoft Defender rated amongst the antivirus products out there? Well, based on some of the reports that has been out there, it's actually rated pretty good in some of the tests that's been in test scores from AV test, AV comparison, and so on. So for most businesses, you will be pretty good secured with the Defender for Business as the endpoint protection client to go with. It uses the same engine and so on. So a lot of the same feature set and mechanisms as we know from the Defender for Endpoint, which is the endpoint protection product scale for the enterprises from Microsoft. And this also ramps up and shows that Microsoft is actually a leader when it comes to the modern endpoint security for the enterprises and the small and medium businesses here. So I'd definitely say we're in pretty good hands in terms of the research and the development that goes into this from the Microsoft side. So if we look into what the Defender for Business deliver, it actually delivers on several platforms. As a specific endpoint security product, it's available for Windows and the Mac OS with a limited feature set compared to the Windows endpoint. It's also available for the Android and iOS, where it can help secure end users on these mobile devices as well. We can also install it on virtual desktops, such as the Azure Virtual Desktop or the Windows 365 desktop. So it gives us a broad delivery of endpoint security across all these platforms, which would probably end up securing most of the endpoints we have out there as a small business. In terms of licensing here, I mentioned it's part of the M365 Business Premium SKU. So we know the Business Premium SKU as an advanced version of the business standard. So if we take the standard, lay the Defender for Business on top, among other things such as AD Premium and other advanced features here, we have the Business Premium SKU, which is rather cheap compared to what feature set we get and compared to the enterprise SKUs. We are also able to buy this individually. Then it's licensed per user SKU to around $3 per user per month, whereas the Business Premium, where we get the full suite here, is around the $22 per user per month SKU. And all this is targeted licensing per user level. So it's for our users, and we can license this for up to 300 users in our business, just as with the Business Premium SKUs. So this is the limit using the Defender for Business. This is our 300 user limit here in our tenants. I'd say for most smaller and even at least in Denmark mid-sized companies, the 300 user limit is definitely sufficient for this. Something that hasn't been part of the rollout of the Defender for Business is what do we do on the server level? And right now, Microsoft is doing a preview of the Defender for Business for servers as well. So in the future, we will be able to put the Defender for Business feature set on our on-premise servers as well. So the quite large-scale feature set we get from the Defender for Business is available on our server side as well. And the last I saw on the pricing is that it looks like it goes into the same as a single Defender for Business SKU. So it would be around the $3 per, and then it would be a server per month setting here. So this is the licensing that we see on the Defender for Business. So what do we actually get with the Defender for Business? So we get different features to elevate the security we see in our business. We get specific management around the threat that is flagged in terms of what is installed in our environment, what vulnerabilities is seen with the devices, the softwares that is installed in our environment. We see all that management in our dashboard pane, and we can create alerts and so on around this as well. We can tweak the attack surface reduction as well, based on policies that is available with the Defender for Business. And we get some basic next-gen protection in terms of antivirus, firewall protection, and so on. We have some endpoint detection and response and automate investigation remediation as part of this as well. It's not as full scale as you would see in a full-scale Defender for Endpoint, where it's part of the Plan 2, but you still get a limited set of these features available as part of the Defender for Business. All that is packed into a nice, simple administration interface, and with APIs and integration to other third-party services or other Microsoft services as well. So if we try and drill into a little of this to show you the differences in terms of where does this put us in comparison to the integrated protection that Microsoft is delivering to the enterprises. So when we compare the Defender for Business against Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 and the Endpoint Plan 2, we see on the left side in our pane here, we have a lot of the features that is actually available in the Plan 2 here. What basically don't get is a specific threat hunting and access to the threat experts from Microsoft. But then besides this, we more or less get the same feature set as Plan 2. There are some of the features which is marked with a little paragraph here, which is a limited feature set in comparison to maybe automated response and remediation sets as that is part of Plan 2. But you still get some of the features as part of the Defender for Business. I'll not dive into all the details here, but I'll try to outline some of the behaviors that we see, for instance, in the endpoint detection and response part. We get some behavioral detection post-breach in the Microsoft Defender for Business, and then some of the risk investigation tools and maybe some of the more retention searchable data that we have is not part of the Defender for Business. That if you want all these advanced features, you would need to go to MDE Plan 2 to get this. But if we think about what a lot of the SMBs has out there today, and a lot of them already has the licenses to the Business Premium, this is a pretty feature-rich tool they're getting for the protection here. If we see on some of the other capabilities that we get in comparison, that there's a few where you need to step up to the enterprise licenses, but I'd say for most SMB this is pretty sufficient. Another thing in terms of the Microsoft Defender for Business, since this is targeted the SMBs, Microsoft has done a lot in terms of integration to something like the M365 Lighthouse, and Lighthouse is sort of a dash pane for targeted partners and SMPs that a lot of SMBs might pay to get a service where they take care of their infrastructure, they take care of all the incidents and alerts that come from the Defender for Business. And that is one of the reasons why we have the integration we have with the 365 Lighthouse. So if we step into the onboarding, if you work with a tenant that hasn't set up Defender for Business yet, this is what will welcome you when you enter the security portal, that you have licenses for Defender for Business, you're ready to onboard the Defender for Business, and basically go through the onboarding process here, where you to begin with can sign up and tell who in the tenant is our security admin, who needs to manage this service, who needs to maybe just be a security reader to view vulnerabilities and the alerts we see in here. and we can set up email notifications, who needs to be alerted here. And then we can set up devices. So you can set up that we want to target all devices. If we do this, it will target devices that is enrolled into our endpoint manager. So basically, you don't have to do anything else besides enrolling all the end user devices into endpoint manager, and they will be automatically onboarded into the Defender for Business. Or we can go out and select who we would like to onboard based on group memberships or devices and so on. Next here is we identify how we want to configure the security settings here. So do we want the simplified approach, which was the focus with the Defender for Business, where we have a few best practice policies within the security portal that is part of the simplified configuration, or do we want to configure everything here using the MEM security settings that is already part of the endpoint manager? And we can choose this as part of the onboarding. So if you look into these recommended security policies that comes out of box with the Defender for Business, we have a next-gen protection policy, which takes care of the configuration. So if we want to go in and change some of the default settings, this would be the policies. We can either tweak them or create new ones. And if we want to tweak some of the settings in the anti-malware or antivirus, or maybe scanning of removable drives, we can do that within each of these policies. And the same goes for the firewall settings. So basically, it's two policies that is being deployed as part of this, and we'll have a look at that during the demo as well. That's basically it. Now we have Defender for Business as part of our tenant if we have the SKUs that gives us this. Something to mention here, if you have a tenant that has a mix of SKUs, and a mix of SKUs, meaning you might have the Defender for Business, or you might have Business Premium where you have the Defender for Business, but you have also maybe deployed enterprise SKUs where you have the full Defender for Endpoint, then you'll not see the simplified approach in the security portal that you see with a plain small business SKU. But you will see a more feature-rich portal, because you'll get a lot of the features that will only be available as part of the Defender for Endpoint as well. So that is why some of the features of the portal might look a bit different in terms of what SKUs you might have. But let's have a look into the portal and see how everything actually looks. So as the admin here, we enter our tenant and we go into the security center. And the first thing that will welcome here is our secure score, and we'll see devices at risk. I onboarded a new device to play around with the Defender for Business here, and I simulated some attacks. So we basically see one device here at risk, which is shown here. But this is part of the main portal of the security that shows us these. We can also dive into the endpoint specific features, which is part of Defender for Business here. So if we go into the vulnerability management dashboard here, and this is a test tenant, so some of the data might be a little, but I needed something to work with to show you some of the features here. So basically in a vulnerability management, we see some recommendations in terms of security recommendations towards our clients that has been enrolled into this. So it will automatically detect what is installed on all the devices. And if there are any concerns in terms of maybe software updates, it will do some security recommendations, and it will show you let's say here I enrolled a 10 laptop out of that need update. I have old Cisco AnyConnect that needs updates. I have some .NET, some Office that need update. All that is automatically shown in here just to show you some of the features that is available. And then we have some of the automatic attack surface reduction recommendation that is part of this as well. So you can use these recommendations to go through all the steps and tweak these to get a better security level for your organization. And in terms of better security level, you can always see the exposure score here. The score tries to reflect the current exposure that your organization or devices has. And you need to keep it at as low as possible, basically, in terms of keeping the exposure low in the organization. So we have the recommendations to work with. We can see which software has been detected in your organization, see how many exposed devices that is part of this maybe. And then we also have, if you has onboarded this or maybe started testing these, a good place to start out is the tutorials, because with the tutorials you could do a lot of simulations. So with these simulations you can simulate a backdoor drop maybe, or some fileless attacks using PowerShells. And some of these I've run just to show you how these will be leveraged within the portal here. And depending on the configuration, you can set up so people in your organization get alerts about this, or you can go in the portal to actually work with some of these. As mentioned earlier, we have one device at risk, and that's a device where I simulated some attacks on. So if we check the device here, we see it has different alerts all accumulated into one incident. So if we dive into some of these, a suspicious process injection observed. So if we go into this alert, we can actually see in details at what time it was run, which laptop and which user ran this. It was a Word document that seemed to have some hidden PowerShell code in it. And that suspicious process executed then a PowerShell command and created a file on our laptop here. So this is the details of hunting that the endpoint, the Defender for Endpoint gives us. Not only the Defender for Endpoint, but also the Defender for Business in this case. So for a small business, this is quite advanced tooling that we actually get with the SKUs here. I'll not dive deeply into to these hunting processes. It's just to show you how we can see them, how we can work with it, and how we can trace back and actually work with the involved devices in here. So if we take a step back into the simplified configuration that we have, we basically only have two policies, as I mentioned before, the next gen protection and the firewall policy. And this is where we can work with some of the settings that we have, and also in terms of which devices has been onboarded with these policies. Take a step back here. That's just to show you what the Defender for Business actually gives us in terms of protection, and how we can actually get a good dashboarding overview as the admins or the security admins for a tenant here as well. Of course, best practice is to set up the alerting and monitoring, so you actually get proactively alerts when you see something and not just catching it up in the portal. So if we take a brief summary in the Defender for Business here, Defender for Business then gives us just more than just Windows Defender. It gives us a layered protection and more than just antivirus, since it connects to the advanced mechanisms that we have in the endpoint cloud security, and basically gives us this enterprise-grade security to the SMB customer segment that we have. As shown earlier, it's the Defender product is well awarded and among the best in class with a lot of third-party testers. And from the Microsoft side, it's definitely a product that it's targeted for the SMB segment. And now that we see the Defender for Business server product coming out as well, if you want to test it out, it's available in preview and you can sign up for it as far as I can see. And then we have the integration to partner APIs and Lighthouse as well. So that's what I had on the Defender for Business. So there's time for questions, and we have the session feedback QR, which I would hope that you will go into and give some feedback as well. But if you have any question, don't hesitate to reach out or ask. I'll stick around in the session, so if any question comes up, just reach out. It's definitely an easy way for SMBs to get a lot of good security, very easy, and it's easy to deploy as well. With a lot of the other features that has come into the business premium SKU license, I'd say a lot of companies can probably manage with that SKU in terms of the size with the limit of 300, but also the feature set and the security that we actually get within the business premium SKUs. And we can always top that with some specific if they need Azure AD Premium P2 or something else. That's also possible to always elevate and enhance the security. Yeah, I agree. It includes everything basically. I hope you enjoyed the session and the introduction, and then dive into what we can do and what we get with the Defender for Business. So thank you for attending the session.